Welcome to the Kings Beat podcast. I am James Hammer, Kings Insider for ESPN 1320 and the Kings Beat. Joining me today on this lovely Thursday afternoon in the bright sun, Fox 40, Sean Cunningham. Sean, how are you?
I'm peachy. It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. And guess what I did today? I went to the zoo with Domantas Sabonis.
What?
Yeah.
That's not random and weird.
We'll get to that later, but I'm doing great. How are you guys?
Good. Hey, that's a good get there, Sean, except for
Thanks,
the
buddy.
zoo smells. Yeah.
Huh. Well, not today. Maybe it's because we were there early enough.
It might be because it's not so hot.
Yeah. No, the weather was phenomenal. Yeah, it was great.
All right. And of course, we have Brenden Nunes from the Kings Pulse podcast. Brendon, how are you?
I'm doing well. I was going to ask Sean about Bottle Rock, but now
yes.
I am asking if we can get a sneak peek at Domas's favorite animals.
Here's the thing. We have a long show to get to. We can get to all of it. Let's not bury the lead. Let's get right to the most important thing. Bottle Rock was amazing, as it always is.
You always say that, whether it is or not, but I did see George Kittle's up there rocking out, right?
George Kittle is out there doing the share impressions and singing along with Quinn XCI. I forget. I don't really listen to him.
You got it right,
Brendan. Yeah. He's a little new on my radar. But yeah, that was Kittle was there like all 3 days, I believe, or at least 2 of the 3 days, and he was he was absolutely in heaven, and he had all the access in the world. So, he's meeting Keanu Reeves, he's jamming out with Quinn XCII, as I've learned, and then he's up on stage doing the culinary events with these incredible chefs from all over the world, and the great Roy Choi and David Chang and Giada Laurinaitis, or I think I said that right. They just all fly into Napa and be a part of some great fun stuff. And yeah, I had a blast. I think as people ask me what was my favorite performance, and it's probably going to let some people down, and I think it's kind of a tie between like Lupe Fiasco, who was just always my favorite, Wu-Tang Clan, and Duran Duran. So I'm a little all over the board. But even Bastille,
all over the board.
Yeah, even I hadn't seen Bastille before. I'm a fan of them. I only know a couple songs, but I thought they were tremendous. But yeah, it always ends up being some of the maybe not the peak headliners that end up being my favorite. So it was great. I got a little sun, clips, even though it was
the Lupe clips you posted got me a little bit. Not gonna lie.
Like got you like jealous to be there?
Yeah. That one, and then the Quinn.
Really
it's technically Roman numerals for 92. But
okay, so Quinn 92.
Yeah.
There's a lot of these people doing the Roman numerals. Like, doesn't Charlie XCI and there's Quinn whatever. But
we gotta figure out. Like, this is actually the Kings Beat XX. Can't add another one. I don't know. We gotta figure out the right Roman numerals.
It's kind of like when the Kings had like 7 guys who are like the thirds. Right. Remember that? Like, we had Ben McLemore, we had Harry Giles, Frank Mason.
Yeah.
Like, there were more thirds.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the most. It was also weird that like it was the first time I'd been to Bottle Rock, and I never wore shorts. Like, I was jeans all 3 days because the weather was a little on the cool side, but I did get some. You can't tell right now. I look pasty in the video, but there was some little sun area on the sides of me, but it was a lot of fun. I suggest everybody try it. It's a very eclectic festival with all types of music. You'll have fun.
Hurley hat the whole time.
Oh yeah, several different variations. So, yeah, it was great.
Did you save anybody like no. You didn't save Keanu Reeves? That would be a great story if you saved John Wick.
No, but I did.
John Wick.
I did ask. I did ask Domas, who makes his main residence in Napa these days, if because I'd asked him earlier in the season if he was going to go to Bottle Rock, and he says, "Oh yeah, I'm looking forward to it." Blah blah blah. I think he wanted to see Red Hot Chili Peppers, and then speaking to him after what I hung out with him today at the Zune, and he said, I asked him, I was like, I didn't see a Bottle Rock. Did you go? And he said, He said, no, we could have gone Sunday, which is when the Chili Peppers were headlining. And he says, the weather wasn't that good. And I'm thinking, what the fuck is wrong with you? The weather was great. Like, it wasn't like super sunny and like, 90, 80 degrees. But I did look at him funny. Like, it might have been a little cloudy and it might have got a little breezy, but the weather was phenomenal, my guy.
Yeah, but like if he went with the wife, isn't the wife pregnant again?
She's pregnant again, and he, Tiger's 14 months old, his son, so
that's a little too young to bring. Boy, he's 14 months. Is that crazy how fast time goes by?
He's got the nice VIP treatment. I think it would have been okay. I don't know.
Yeah, he probably. I don't know if he would have got up and sang like Kittle, but
no, he didn't have to do that.
Probably not.
Thankfully.
All right. Well, you are listening to the Kings Beat podcast, where we just meander through a bunch of weird stuff. So if you're watching right now on YouTube, make sure to give us a thumbs up if you don't mind. Don't give us 2 thumbs up because then it takes away the first thumbs up.
Takes it away. Yeah.
Subscribe to the channel.
I always picture some guy. I keep giving you a thumbs up, and it's just not
like
doing
47 thumbs up, but it's all one guy trying to get the thumbs up to stay on there. I'm sure that's happened more than once. Let's see. If you are not a subscriber to the Kings Beat, jump on board here, both the YouTube channel, but also go to thekingsbeat.com, become a premium subscriber to thekingsbeat.com. And I'm just going to set the date. We are doing the happy hour next Thursday. No question. 5:30, 7:30-ish. I'll announce a guest, hopefully this weekend. I think I have a guest lined up. It's going to be a really cool guest. I'm hoping I don't have to shift gears again, but that's kind of like life in this world right now, where people are kind of taking a break from basketball and getting away for a few minutes. And then also we have a secondary podcast coming out this week. I don't know if you listened to last week's 2 podcasts, but the 3 of us had 1 podcast, and then I sat down with Ricardo Brito Reyes from Portugal. And that was a great conversation about not only Nimi, but Sasha Vezenkov, because he's sat there and covered EuroLeague basketball forever, and he knows Sasha as well. So this week, we did a second podcast with Mr. Jerry Reynolds. The video is going to be a little funky. It's a long story, but we had to switch to Zoom for some stupid reason. And so I don't know if I'm going to put the video out or just the audio file, but we have a nice conversation with Jerry talking about building out the roster from here, about his thoughts on Harrison Barnes maybe coming off the bench, his thoughts on Keegan Murray and Sasha Vezenkov. Some really good stuff in there from Jerry. So look for that probably on Friday or Saturday morning. Let's get to this. The NBA finals are starting tonight. Usually I don't do like tonight's and Thursdays and stuff like that, but too bad it already happened. So Denver Nuggets, Miami Heat. Let's start with you, Brenden. Are you shocked that this is who we're seeing in the finals? And what are you most looking forward to?
I'm definitely shocked about Miami's side. I think that, after the first couple games of their series, it made sense, but they're not the typical 8 seed. So going with the 8 seed narrative feels a little weird to me, but it is the reality of where they were placed. This was a team that was really close. I think they were down double digits in that second play-in game to Chicago, and then they came back and won that, and they very likely could have not even been in this postseason. And now we're talking about them in the finals. I think Denver is heavily favored for good reason, but it's obviously Miami's comfort zone to be the underdog. So I think it's an interesting dynamic, and I'm admittedly curious to kind of watch the Jimmy Butler continued storyline of just playoff Jimmy, and he's building up his legacy, and it's interesting to see how that continues to grow. And also just the Nuggets play a beautiful brand of offensive basketball that I always enjoy watching. The ball movement they have, all the different shot creation, and the chess match that's going to come with 2 great coaches. Like I think it's going to be a fun series. And I guess one other thing I'm curious about is just like how much the viewership just I don't know if struggles is the right word, but how much lower it is, because there's a lot of talk around that. They're like, oh, this isn't going to be as interesting. Not as many people are going to tune in. Not your stereotypical big names. So I'm curious what those numbers look like. I still think it's going to be great basketball, but I'm curious.
Sean, you were able to catch up with Gabe Vincent, who was like a superstar in the Eastern Conference Finals. Just how is Gabe doing, and what was your takeaway from that conversation?
Yeah, it was great. Yesterday being media day, you really kind of wonder for the Heat a little bit, because they come out of that series going 7 games. They almost piss it away, and then they stay in Boston and have to fly straight to Denver. Fly straight to Denver, have your media day, and then here we are, game 1 of the finals. So they're the ones that I think didn't get either the blessing or the curse of having a long layoff. And for somebody like Gabe, that could have been a little advantageous, even for the Heat in general. I mean, Gabe obviously turned his ankle in game 4, missed game 5, plays in game 6 and game 7 with a bad ankle. Says he's fine. He's in the NBA finals, looking forward to it. But then you have Tyler Hero, who's trying to inch his way back, and you've got other guys on that team that are just all banged up. So, but there is something to be said about teams that get to play every other day and have that kind of rhythm to their schedule. And that's where I think he would agree that they have succeeded, having the blessing of just kind of that repetition and not having a schedule where things kind of get away from you. But it was good to catch up with him. I did so for people who are hearing his name for the first time and not familiar. He's, born in Modesto, went to Modesto Christian High School for 1 year as a freshman, then jumped over into Stockton, where he went to St. Mary's High School. It was with the Rams. And I even went down after speaking with Gabe yesterday to talk to his old high school coach, Ken Green, and talk about how, his demeanor, his unselfishness, the player that he is today is a lot like what he was even at the high school level. And guys like that, just being a steady force, where he says, yeah, he was easily the most talented kid, but he's a coach's dream because you don't have to coach him. Like he's so good for everybody else, makes everyone better. If you need him to go play a certain role, he can do that. And catching up with him, it's like he's experienced the NBA finals before. Granted, it was during the bubble, but he never played, And so that's one of the cool things about his journey is here he is in his second NBA finals experience on a team where Kyle Lowry is on your roster and he's your starting point guard. Gabe is, and he's going to be able to play that role. And you just look at his journey, as I mentioned, going from Stockton. He was with the Stockton Kings, was in the Kings organization briefly. Everyone remembers that photo with where he was signing with his Exhibit 10 with Vlade Divac, and goes to the Stockton Kings and then gets plucked by Miami. And he's been there ever since and really worked his way. And he fits that kind of cast of characters where it's the unwanteds, the overachievers, and the
island
underdogs.
of misfit toys.
Totally. And he fits that role, and he's, Spoelstra and really, you mentioned Jimmy Butler, Brendan. I mean, Jimmy Butler is, in my opinion, the guy that gives him life, not only on this team, but just where he has found his comfort level, his voice. That's me as someone who knows him. I don't know that he completely agrees with it, but they are very, very close. And what's cool to me is, aside from him being in the NBA finals and being able to play for a championship and know that the path he's taken to get here and have to fight for everything. And now he gets to go, and after this, whether he's a champion or not, he's going to enter the offseason as an unrestricted free agent. He'll be able to control his own destiny for the first time in his NBA career. And I think that's really exciting, but it's a fun conversation. We had to do it in a kind of truncated amount of time, but if you get a chance to see it, check it out.
Cool. Yeah, maybe
money.
Yeah, he's gonna make some money.
He's gonna make some money.
I think so.
Yeah, I think he's gonna get. I don't know if he's gonna get paid, but I wouldn't be surprised if he gets $8 million a year, maybe a little bit more. I mean,
have you peeked at who comes off the Kevin Love, $27 million comes off the books.
Oh, yeah.
They've got a couple, Udonis Haslem, who makes more than Gabe Vincent. Haslem is 40 years old and really hasn't played and is entering the twilight. He's entering his retirement.
In 8 years, he hasn't played, Sean.
Right, and he's making more than Gabe, who's ended up being their starting point guard. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of the everyman story, the self-made NBA player. I love those stories. And that's the reason why I keep saying that Miami has a chance against anybody, because they seem to have like a whole bunch of those stories on their roster. They're really good at finding the diamond in the rough and polishing it and making it into a really nice NBA player, and then getting that player paid. That's what they've done for years now. It's why I consider Eric Spoelstra and his staff and his system like the best of the best. I think he's probably the best coach in the NBA right now. And he does more with less than anyone that I've ever seen. He just creates NBA players, which you just don't see very often. It's really cool to see. Yeah. But that, like, if we might as well do it now. Like, what's your prediction though for the series? I'll start, because you guys, sometimes I forget to give my input, and then you guys get on me at the end. I still, like, whether Miami's a good story or not, I got Denver in, probably going to say 6, but I want to say Denver in 5. I just think that they're a really, really, really good team that has been completely overlooked by everybody. And we're just ignoring the fact that it was probably the best team in the NBA all season, and we just ignored it and looked past them. So Denver in 6, that's my guess.
Go ahead, Brenden.
I got the same, actually. I think Denver in 6. I think that Denver wins one of the first 2 games in Miami, so game 3 or 4, and then just doesn't lose a home game. They haven't lost a home game this playoffs. I know that Miami's won an away game in every series, but I think what it comes down to is I just don't know that Miami's going to be able to keep up offensively. I think that Denver's offense is ridiculous, and Miami will fight like hell, like they always do. And as much as like Jimmy is extremely crucial to Miami, I think it's about those role players having big games, and I don't know that it can happen often enough to keep up with Denver.
I really am disgusted that I have to agree that we're just going to be uninteresting and say Denver, all of us in 6.
Wow.
And here's here's the thing. Like you mentioned, like, oh yeah, no one gives Denver their due, and look, Michael Malone keeps ringing that bell, almost in a nauseating way. But it really works for them in this postseason. And I think if he's gonna, why quit while you're ahead? Like, if you're going to be asked about Jokic all the time, and you're going to be asked about the success of your guys and Jamal Murray and people who maybe have lost belief in him, it's like, I guess, and even Michael Porter Jr. and Aaron Gordon, who's had a career year. If you're going to keep being asked about them, I guess it's hard to not bring that type of stuff up when really no one gives you their credit. But on the flip side of that, you were the number 1 team in the West. I'd push back slightly that I don't think you were the best team in the league, but you were in the conversation. You're easily in the top 5, in my opinion. And I thought just everything was in the East. I thought all the talent this year was in the East, and I think that showed in the win-loss record. But while no one's given Denver their due, nobody gives Miami their due. So it's a matchup of just the most disrespected teams that are good, in my opinion, 2 of them. And so while here we are siding with Denver because they're number 1 in the West and they have the beautiful offense and they've got the most talented player, and you look at matchups and go, yeah, Jimmy Butler, playoff Jimmy is great, but they got a guy named Aaron Gordon over there, and they've got some other guys that could maybe put some clamps on him, and they do what they do to Boston, who we did, at least myself, I thought Boston would win the series, and then all of a sudden Boston storms back, and everyone's thinking that maybe the Miami Heat are on the ropes. And granted, it's a little tip-in by Derek White that really made them kind of pucker as they went back to Boston. But the thing that Miami does so well, guys, is win on the road. And they can, and they've shown that ability to do so. So while I am expecting Denver to kind of take care of business and do it in 6, and I think Denver will be the more raucous environment. If you look at if you're comparing home court advantages in the 2 arenas, I mean, Denver has never been there before, never been to the finals. Miami knows what the finals look like. Granted, one time it was in the bubble, but I'm expecting Denver to take care of business. But there's that doubt again that goes with the Miami Heat not giving them their due, and I would not be surprised to see Miami come in and take care of business. And if they do, I believe it will be because it's a long series. I think it will go 7 games, and if it goes 7 games, I like Miami if it goes 7 games, but I think Denver will take care of business. I think they'll do it in 6.
I like the more rested team. Like, I know, like, getting out of rhythm and all that stuff, that's
Right.
certainly a concern, but that's a concern for, like, game 1. Once you get past game 1, like, one team had just a week to heal up and get ready, and the other team did not. And so, I don't know. I'm intrigued by it. I think it's going to be a fun series. I'm gonna watch. Like, I know what Brennan's talking about when it comes to, like, they're concerned that maybe this won't have the draw. Like, who cares? Who cares
but
what
you know
city
what?
they're from?
And part of the storylines, I know some of the players, the Morris notwithstanding, and the every time these guys play, it gets chippy. I mean, it gets a little. There's some stuff there. I mean, the Kyle Lowry thing, Jimmy Butler's always got something going on. The Nikola Jokic thing with Morris. There's a lot of these things have happened in years past. And look, Miami also, they lost both those games against Denver, but they were closely contested during the regular season. So. I think it will be entertaining, and I was surprised to hear Brenden bring up the ratings because I don't give a damn, but I think this is going to be a very entertaining series.
I think so too. I think it's going to be a highly watched series as well. Let's shift gears a little bit. Jordi Fernandez is still in the running for the Toronto Raptors job, according to Mark Stein. Like, he's a favorite. According to our friend Damian Barling, he's hearing that they very much like him and that he's, like, right there in the running. What are you guys' thoughts on Jordi Fernandez potentially going to Toronto and sort of the ripple effect that it'll have with the Kings, especially on the heels of this crazy contract that the Detroit Pistons signed with Monty Williams?
I believe it was 4 years, 78, with incentives in there that have another year option and could take it up to $100 million, which is a number that I've never heard of for a coach. Obviously,
sounds like some Buddy Hield numbers up in here.
Pretty crazy. I think one of the fun aspects for me with the Jordi and it being Toronto is just the fact that that's where he got his first NBA win as a head coach, because it's where Mike Brown was ejected and then Jordi filled in, got the win. They had a cool moment in the locker room that they posted to socials. So it doesn't really matter, but that's kind of cool to me. And I think that I'm glad to see Jordi getting this sort of recognition. Mike Brown speaks extremely highly of him, stuff we kind of talked about in the last one. But it would obviously leave a void in Sacramento's staff, and you got to kind of try to figure out what that is. The label defensive coordinator. There are those labels, right? Like Luke or Triano, offensive coordinator, and Jordi's defensive coordinator, right? Those are still like applied labels. So they would need to go fill a defensive coordinator, which is right there, second in line, and that would leave a void. But Mike Brown is very clearly well liked around the league, and I know that alone won't draw guys, but I do think it helps.
Sean? Oh, he's got a huge network of guys. Yeah, he can. And I'm to be honest, I'm hoping Jordi gets it. I mean, selfishly, it'd be nice to see him back in Sacramento, but I know for him, I think that's I thought like something like Detroit, obviously being a team of up and comers, you should be compensated very, very well, because that team's going to need continuity to do what they do. I am surprised that Monty Williams is getting the money that he got, but the thing that stands out to me with just the money that's being thrown around in this league, coaches should get paid more. I mean, they should. I mean, if you're relying so much on your coach, and I remember in the old, early 2000 days, and there was a part of me that really thought that coaching, especially head coaching, had a little bit of overrated syndrome or label that could be attached in the NBA because teams aren't like the Miami Heats. They're not like the Eric Spoelstras that have these systems and where guys come in and it becomes a system game. It was just a talent. And it still is for the most part a talent-driven league. But now I think you're seeing more and more structure across the board in the NBA. And I think coaching matters a little bit more in a league where, let's face it, like you're going to have in-season tournament coming up. You've got 3 months of playoff basketball. You have so many games. You have rosters that are inflated with contracts, and hopefully it does trickle over to those coaches now. So I like to see it. For Jordi, I hope he gets the job. I really do. I think he would. I think he would flourish. I think Toronto would be a great scenario for him. But that being said, should he leave, that'd be great. For the Kings, they can go out and they can still find somebody to add to their roster. It's an exciting opening that they can build and hopefully look to improve themselves. Find another voice. Jordi's very well liked, and this coaching community is very they stick together, so they're going to cheer themselves on and hope that he does well. And look, Mike Brown's probably going to do everything he can to get Jordi that job in Toronto if he's asked for recommendations and things like that. But I know Kings fans, for as good as he is, they'd like to see him come back, and so would the Kings. But first and foremost, taking care of Jordi Fernandez and getting him into a head coaching role is the priority.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we look around the league and sort of the jobs that were available this summer, there's like 2 really bad stinkers and then like 4 incredible jobs and then the Raptors job. And so I kind of put it in like a different category, because if you look at the Houston and Detroit jobs, like taking those jobs is just, there's a good chance that you won't see the end of your contract. Like they have too much young talent. It's way too difficult to win in this league with young talent like that. I think that's why coaching means so much now. Sean, you brought up how coaches used to be like maybe a little overrated. And now I think coaches mean a lot, because you have to set the culture of your club, because a lot of your players are way younger than they were in the 80s and the 90s. Yeah. And so you're dealing with a much younger, group of people and what comes with that. But I think, again, I don't know that Jordi, how successful he would be with like the Phoenix job or the Philly job or, the Bucks job, these jobs that have so much expectation for a guy who does not have head coaching experience. The Toronto job, you're talking about a team that's like a bubble playoff team, but has talent and has some, sure, they have some issues this summer when it comes to free agency and Fred VanVleet and like whether they're going to make moves with Siakam or OG Anunoby. But overall, they still have a good talent level. They have a great fan base. And, it's a beautiful city. And I think it's a good job. It's a middle of the road job, which again, I think it's kind of perfect for a first time head coach, because a lot of times you're going to fail in these jobs, especially if the job is too big or the job is too small. So this job just kind of feels just right, if that makes sense. So yeah, I think it's good. And I don't know, like Luke Laux is going to coach the summer league team. We all know that. That's a big deal. And I think he's probably the guy who gets to step up to the front of the bench role. Not that he would take Jordi's spot, but that he would like take a step up. And I think it leaves open potential for other guys on that staff to move up again and maybe take that role that Jordi had this last year. Even a guy like potentially Doug could maybe find his way moving up the bench and finding himself in a more substantial role on Mike Brown's staff. And that's before they go out and they start chasing people and start bringing new faces in.
There was a time earlier this year where I think Mike Brown get sick for a game or two, and then Jordi coached against Denver. And Luke Laux was the one that moved to the front of the bench from the guys that were in the back. But I'm curious if you guys have perspective on this. How often when top assistants go get head coaching jobs, do they take any other members of the coaching staff they were just on with?
It can happen. Yeah, it can very much happen, especially, you're in the off season and, if Jordi wanted to pluck someone like Luke Laux, if you pay him and give him a bigger role or like an associate head coach title, whatever, it's possible. But I think that's that's part of the interview process. Is, hey, Jordi, who's coming with you? And I think Jordi, when he goes to interviews with teams, knows what a significant portion of his people would be. Maybe not all 5 or 6 or whatever his staff in the immediate, but at least the top 3 that would likely come with him. So they've kind of got that mapped out. I wouldn't expect it necessarily, though. I think there could be some possibilities that exist outside of that, but just to see him, even if he's a finalist, for Toronto, with all the names that are available, I mean, that's impressive. I said a few weeks back that I thought that, he probably wouldn't get any gigs but to be in the interview stage and process and go through all of this and be considered and get your name out there, so that you're hopefully capable of landing something in the next year or 2, 3 years down the road. It would be just so valuable. And I do want to clear up one thing that Brenden mentioned, just in case someone's listening and they don't know. It is a kind of a real shitty stat, but yeah, Jordi was in Toronto and he gets the win. And when he fills in for Mike Brown, when he leads the team to victory as a head coach, those wins still go to Mike Brown. And so I know what you're saying, Brenden, because yeah, it is like he gets to experience the win as being the head coach. But I just want, just for the knick-knack, for nerd nicks out there, I want to make sure. Yeah, he still has a 0-0. So when he goes and becomes a head coach somewhere else and leads his team to victory, that will be his official first NBA win.
Even when Luke Walton won 39 games with the Warriors or whatever, 39-3 or whatever they were, something ridiculous, those don't go on his win-loss record.
Gotcha.
Yeah. There's no win padding there, padding going on with their stuff. It always does go to the head coach as long as you're on an interim basis. Well, I guess if you're the interim, as opposed to stepping in and filling in for somebody.
Correct. Yeah. Your head coach is still technically within the organization.
Yeah,
that's where you get it.
Poor Tyrone Corbin, he owns that 7-21 record with the Sacramento Kings, that 0.25 win percentage. Exactly. So it's just that little burst right there in the middle. Just sorry about that. Basketball hill happened right here. So let's get to the other thing. We talked about Luke Laux is going to coach the Summer League team. That of course begins with California Classic, July 3rd and July 5th at Golden One Center. I was reporting this last week that I had heard rumors that the Spurs and Hornets would be included. That ended up being correct. My source was good, but I always like to have a secondary source. That's why it was more of a rumor than it was like guaranteed. But the number 1 and number 2 overall picks in the draft could be in Sacramento for the California Classic. Whether they play or not is a whole nother situation with Victor Wembanyama and either Scoot Henderson or Brandon Miller probably going number 2. But still, it adds intrigue. It adds fun. Even if Wembanyama is just in the building, that would be kind of cool. And so I think it's a boon for Sacramento. The California Classic is back at Golden One after a year at Chase Center. Let's just start with Brenden again. Like, what do you think? What are your thoughts on the Cal Classic? And that's going to be really cool leading up to Summer League.
I love Summer League basketball, and getting more teams in Golden One Center is great. I'm glad to see Sacramento hosting it again, even if Wembanyama doesn't play, which, I'd be surprised. I feel like Vegas is usually the main show, but they have a game lined up on the first day, July 3rd. The second game is the Spurs versus the Hornets, and if both guys are playing, I mean, that could be a pretty fun moment. Not betting on it, but even if not, I think that seeing draft picks is fun. These up and coming guys, some guys will probably still be on the team from Sacramento's perspective. You'll get to see maybe some growth from Keon Ellis. And these other teams have decent draft picks as well, maybe made it further, but the Lakers have 17th pick. It's pretty funny. Miami's in the finals. They have the 18th pick. But
That's crazy.
There's always intriguing guys that I think show a lot. You know, I think the first Cal Classic, like I remember seeing Bam Adebayo playing point guard the entire time, and that's a flash into the playmaking jump that he's eventually able to make. So I love Summer League basketball, and I'm glad it's back in Sacramento, and bringing 2 more teams, especially when their top 2 picks, is nothing but a great thing.
Omer, you're at 7, dominated.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, this was kind of a it wasn't much of a secret. But I think they were going to try to make this a 3-day event at some point, but it ends up being the 2 nevertheless. And
it's normally 3.
Yeah,
I'm surprised,
especially when you add the teams. I think it's going to be something where I don't think Victor Wembanyama plays. I do think he will be in the building. I do think he'll be with the Summer League team as much as he can before he has to go back to Europe and get ready for all of the off-season FIBA stuff and all the, just all those, get his life together to be able to come over to the U.S. as well. But there are a bunch of interesting teams, and I think Sacramento is the rightful place. Look, there's more to do in San Francisco and LA, and neither team seems to really want the California Classic, and that was by virtue of the Warriors coming off of the NBA Finals last year, and then weeks later diving right into the California Classic, and that building sat empty for that day during the week, which was all by design, but it was really unfortunate because in Sacramento they would have not filled it out, but they would have had a very good crowd on hand to probably see even a third day of California Classic. So I'm glad it's back in Sacramento. I don't think it should really leave. And I think the organization does a really good job. I mean, they really do. And to be able to add the other teams, they do a really good job of seeing that through. Usually there's been concerts in the plaza at certain points. People get excited for it. I was telling one of their people today that I honestly feel like the Kings could become a dynasty like the Warriors, and still California Classic would still be well attended in Sacramento, because you don't really have a whole lot that you're competing with in terms of having to bring people to draw people into your building in July for basketball. So and it's more affordable. It's not like a typical Kings ticket for a lot of people. So I used to joke that Summer League and even the WNBA, when Sacramento was fortunate and lucky enough to have a franchise, that this creates a lot of opportunity for folks that ordinarily can't come to the Kings as often as they would like to. And for that reason alone, it's such a great event, and I'm glad it's back in Sacramento. It's got a lot of interesting things there. I'm actually more intrigued with the Hornets being in town, because there could be where they sit in the draft. Everyone knows that Wembanyama is going to be at San Antonio, and here they are with the number 2 pick, and boy, that could be really interesting. And I think that number 2 pick will play when he's in Sacramento.
Yeah, I think it'll be fun. It's going to be it's a good time, and it's a really family oriented event. I think it'll be sold out, which will be crazy, but I think like you buy a ticket and it's for the whole day, or you can buy a pass for both days and you get all 8 games. I mean, it is like it's a fun, kind of like going to the NCAA tournament, except for I think that it's just Sacramento Kings fans for the most part. There's some Warriors fans that come up, but really does depend on like who they draft, who the Kings draft, all that stuff. And then, of course, next year, like you talked about, Sean, like this should stay in Sacramento. The Kings probably don't have a first-round pick in 2024. And so I don't know that really plays into the conversation all that much, because you're not that concerned about it. But it does, you do want to highlight some of these young guys and give them the first taste of the NBA and sort of get them ready for Las Vegas. I think it's a low-key, super fun, laid-back atmosphere that the players tend to really like before they head off to Vegas for another week and that's a little more intense. And the weather's always it's so hot. in Vegas. It's so hot.
Well, it's not the coolest situation in Sacramento in July, but it'll be 100 degrees or more. So,
but not 120, Sean. Like where you almost need a Sherpa to get you from your car to inside the Thomas and Mack Center. Someone needs to carry you. Like we're gonna need some gurneys out here to make sure people make it from the parking lot. Brenden, you got to look.
No, I'm good.
You like it?
I don't love it, no, but
It's
I do very much enjoy being there, but I don't love the weather. Question
Yeah.
for you guys about the roster, Summer League roster. Third year guys will play sometimes, right? Guys going into year 3.
Not
I'm thinking
typically.
Neemias Queta and Kessler Edwards, guys, both in Summer League last year. But
they can ask them, but it's pretty rare, to be honest. Sometimes you'll have a year 3 guy maybe around the team to work out with the team. But I don't think Neemias Queta needs to play at all. I think he's shown enough from being on 2 Summer League rosters, playing in the G League, being all G League team,
dominating the G League.
I think he's shown enough. It's not necessarily, but you might have him around your team and working out with them, but he's also a restricted free agent, so that part can get a little funny. With someone like Kessler Edwards, you might request it. You might ask him to do it, and maybe he does it for California Classic and then doesn't participate in Vegas, something like that. So,
or like 2 days of Vegas. Yeah, there's sometimes they do that where guys participate for a couple of days and then are gone.
And you'll also see
Keegan does that, or is it more of like what we saw with Davion last year?
Oh no,
Keegan had a ton of minutes. Yeah, a lot of minutes. Yep. So he's fine. Those guys, again, they may ask him to work out with the team and be around the team, but no, not that won't happen. I will say this too, there are changes that happen to the rosters sometimes. So it's possible to have a roster in Sacramento for the California Classic for any of those teams that by the time that they shift to Vegas have a couple different players that were added and some that were replaced. So that's always something to watch out for as well.
Yeah, we've even seen the roster for the California Classic like show up and it's missing players. And we're like, huh, that's weird. We had heard this guy and this guy and this guy were going to be on the Kings Summer League roster. And then you get to Vegas and there they are. They're just skipping the Cal Classic. So either way, I think it's a really fun event. And I think people like, if you love basketball, it's well worth it. Just like it's well worth it to go to Vegas once or twice for Summer League. It's a lot of fun. Just for me, like it got old. Like, I don't know, Sean, you still like to go. I know Brenden likes to go. It's like really, really tight. Like the media seating, there isn't a lot of it. To me, it's a little over the top, and I don't love going to Vegas for Summer League. And you just end up like out every night, like crazy. And it's not
for me, it's what I like to call a necessary evil. Like, yeah. Brenden, I know you're such a hoops junkie. You can find enjoyment in watching a lot of bad basketball. I don't.
It's bad.
I've seen so much bad basketball in the past 20 years that it just, I can, some of it there, I can hone in and I can lock in on a certain thing I want to see or a matchup or whatever, but it has nothing typically to do with it. Always has something to do with an individual or how does this person play with that person. But to me, it's the necessary evil of knowing where the league is. You have the entire NBA in Vegas, and it's just it becomes the hub of everything going on. So it's again necessary evil for sure.
Yeah, and I think we're gonna have an interesting summer here that's starting up like really quickly because the Kings have the 24th pick in the upcoming draft. What is it, June 22nd? And we're 3 weeks away from the NBA draft. They also have the 38th pick and the 54th pick, right? So things are starting to heat up. We're done with the combine. All the measurements are in. We're seeing a lot of that stuff filter through. But now we're getting to the phase where the Kings are bringing in groups of 6 prospects. We don't know all that's coming through. To be honest, like a lot of this is like second round pick stuff. and the Kings do a lot of their homework and keep everything in-house at this point. It's very tight-lipped. We do know that that Sheboy has come through. Jalen Wilson, Julian Phillips, Dylan Mitchell. Dylan Mitchell did go back to Texas, so he's off the board. Trace Jackson Davis, which is Dale Davis's son, and quietly becoming one of my favorite prospects. I like Omax. What is it? Olivier Maxence Prosper? He's one of the guys that's standing out to me early in the process. But what do you guys think of the players that we're seeing coming through? It's pretty basic. Like every single one of them is built exactly like Mo Harkless, like except for Trace Jackson Davis. I mean, they literally are looking for 6'8" guys with 7'1" wingspans that can jump. And that can block shots and hopefully hit a 3-point shot. Although most of these guys can't hit a 3-point shot for some reason. They're all D and no 3. A lot of these guys, but is there anything that stands out to you guys early on in the draft process of the prospects that we're actually hearing about at this point?
I mean, we're not getting too many names. I agree with you about the Mo Harkless. Except that my mind it was Casey Okpala, but practically the same thing.
Same exact.
There's a lot of guys I'm watching where like, this is interesting, I'm like, but I don't know, he might be Casey Okpala. And there's just question marks. And that's it's not meant to be a shot at Casey Okpala. I really
it's not. But when you're doing like his low, his floor is Casey Okpala, his ceiling is Mo Harkless. Like half of the guys, you're like, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think my big question at 24 is like, does their draft philosophy change because they're later in the draft? Like we very clearly, this team likes to take guys that you already know what they are, that they're productive. And we've seen that, but that's all with lottery guys, but we're talking 12, 9, and 4. So I think that when you're sitting at 24, does that philosophy change? Are you willing to look at a Koulibaly, which apparently somebody's, Wasserman, I think, was saying today that he might have a promise in the lottery, but like GG Jackson, I think, are you willing to take those type of swings or do you play it a little bit safer? And that's a question to me here that I lean towards playing safer. I think that that's what we've seen from this front office. But again, I don't know if that's any different at 24. There's a lot of wing options, though, whether you want to go safer or if you want to go with more of a hypothetical production now guy.
Yeah, and I also think that like in this particular draft, you look at like 15 to like 40, and there really isn't a consensus yet. Like if you decide to take a guy that some draft boards have at like 38 at 24, like who cares? Like that doesn't matter. So I think this draft is a little more open on that back end where you can like take a stretch for, again, like Olivier Maxim Prosper or even, Trace Jackson Davis. Maxence. Yeah. Omax, right?
Right.
Yeah. That's Sean, what are your thoughts? Do you draft differently?
No, it's always going to be best player available, someone that you, whoever you desire the most. You're these mock drafts. I mean, people, I know they spend a lot of time and they're looking at all these boards and stuff. They don't mean a damn thing.
Nope.
It's a shotgun spray where they just, let's throw these names up here. Here's the top 50 ranked guys that are draft eligible, and let's sort them out and see where they might best fit. So there's a little bit of a science to it. There's not a whole lot of intel necessarily that go into it, especially early on. The closer you get to the draft, some of that intel becomes a little bit greater, I feel. I think right now you're very much in a just a holding pattern, and you're trying to make sense of what visits, who's going where, who met with who's going for second visits, who's going to agency workouts, which have basically all completed by now. You've got your players who dipped their toe in the NBA and have now they've now hit the deadline of jumping back and withdrawing their names for the NBA. So now your pool shrinks dramatically. And
100 players dropped off today.
Yeah.
As we
2 of them from Sacramento, by the way. Jordan Brown, who's a former All-American from Roseville, who played at Prolific Prep. in Napa. He's now going back to Louisiana, which was his third college because he went from Nevada, Reno to Arizona to his dad's alma mater with the Raging Cajuns of Louisiana. So he'll go back for he's got 1 year of eligibility left. So does Coleman Hawkins, a guy who came in and worked out for the Warriors, but also a prolific prep kid from Antelope, who was a Antelope Titan briefly. So 2 Sacramento guys who dipped their toe in the water. And then you got, draft eligible guys like Zach Chappell, who worked out with the Kings, and Sacramento State player, Capital Christian. These are great because somebody like him will need to latch on with a summer league team. It's not like he's going to, it would be very shocking if you were to get drafted, especially in a year where you've got 2 forfeited picks in the second round. So it makes it even tougher for guys, to be drafted this year. So summer league will be to be where his bread will be buttered, and that's the Gabe Vincent route. Go undrafted and try and make a home. But no, I mean, in terms of the Kings, to me, the team will do their own draft board, and you get down to 24, and you look who the highest guy you had rated and still available, you take him. There might be a little conversation that's to be had. I don't sign off to the theory that just because they took somebody like Davion Mitchell 2 years ago and you're with Murray, Keegan Murray this past year, of guys that are a little bit more experienced, that they're going to do the same thing at 24. I don't buy into that. I think there's a likability of players that are a little bit longer in the tooth, that have some seasoning to them, that you don't have to totally spend a lot of time developing, for sure. But if you've got a guy that shows immense talent and upside, and even if they don't factor into being able to play right away, you don't hesitate to pull the trigger and take those players. So, and I don't think the Kings will hesitate to pull the trigger and take a player like that should one be available.
Yeah, like I've had plenty of conversations within the walls, and a lot of their draft strategy is they like to draft what they know, not what they can predict. They like to know. So that's why a guy like when Trace Jackson Davis comes in, you're like, okay, 20 points, 10 rebounds, can't shoot the 3 or didn't shoot the 3, and 2.9 blocks per game, and good assist numbers too. You're like, okay, you can see how you see his productivity, and he's an older prospect, like 23 plus, and the lineage is Dale Davis's son. So you have all of these things that kind of like make you intrigued by him. But also, if he was available like 38, I'm sure the Kings would be at least moderately interested. Like, who knows, like where they place him on their board. I talked to Jerry about this too, because Jerry was, of course, the GM for the Kings. He actually in 1990 had the 4 first-round picks, where he took Lionel Simmons, Travis Mays, Dwayne Coswell, and Anthony Bonner. And kind of interesting because he had number 7, number 14, number 18, and number 23 in the draft. And it's like, how do you approach those? And he said it's way easier to draft later than it is up high, because then you're just like, okay, I'm just going to go with who I think is the best player. Where up high, you got to consider so many of these other things like potential and, really kind of dig in and figure everything out. So, yeah, anyway, I think it's going to be interesting. Maybe we will get more information as time goes on. Maybe we'll get more of these players that we know came through Sacramento. But for the second year in a row, the Kings have decided to keep it pretty tight-lipped and keep media out of their draft process, which is, it's their prerogative, I guess, at this point. But still, it's one of those things where you're missing an opportunity to kind of have fans engaged all summer long, in my opinion. Okay. What else do we got? I think we're going to do the business of basketball. Look at that. Yeah, let's do the business of basketball. Are the Kings, just sort of a pie in the sky question, are the Kings rising at the right time? We're seeing, chaos with teams like Phoenix, switching head coaches. We're seeing, the injury issues of teams like the Clippers. We're seeing the beyond chaos situation with the Memphis Grizzlies. like teams are getting old, teams are falling off. LeBron James and Anthony Davis, and what's going to happen in LA? Even they make it to the Western Conference Finals, but as a 7 seed and as a play-in team, we don't know what's going to happen with a team like Portland Trailblazers. Are they going to blow up? It feels like the Kings might have found like a moment in time where you could actually jump ahead of where maybe you should have been, because some of the teams that are around you are deciding to fall back a little bit. Am I way off base with this, or where are you guys at with this idea?
Sean?
Okay. Well, yeah, I mean, I don't think that that's too surprising. Look, nothing lasts forever. And, we can just look down the road at the Warriors, right? The Bob Myers thing becomes, I mean, that's the thing that, well, I mean, you mentioned getting older, but certainly that's happening there too.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's something that I've been talking about for the greater part of a few months, that didn't think he'd be back. I don't think that, again, I don't think they're going to blow it up. I think they're going to want to remain competitive, and we'll see what happens. But the current iteration that of this Warriors dynasty will look different. And this is the biggest piece to me that will signify that. So I think it's just by design. Like, the Kings can read the tea leaves. They see everyone's rosters. They know everyone's cap structure. They know everyone's age. They know everyone's, what the style of play that they are, and they know what's coming down the pipe, and people that are going down into the sunset. And they've positioned themselves well to be able to compete with a team that is stepping into their prime for the most part. And if they
sandbagged for 16 years waiting for this moment, moment in time.
certainly not 16 years, but you can imagine, even when Vlade Divac was the general manager, he says, well, that's not going to last forever. I'm going to get my own super team just young, as he said, which was just a foolish thing to say, but he was just trying to be lighthearted and fun.
Yeah.
But certainly this new regime gets in here with Monty McNair and Wes Wilcox, and they look at what they have, and it's like, okay, well, how do you either go young? How do you build around it? How do you need to, the franchise altering move, the move that they made was Domantas Sabonis, and showing that they were going to mean business. And here he is stepping into a season that might have some question, about what lies ahead. So I think that you have the potential of rising at the right time, but if you lose Sabonis and don't have the proper roster structure to be able to replace him, or the plan to be able to keep him, replace him, get better, however that looks, you could be treading some water and being in that position that really no team wants to be, and that's being around the 8th seed. Because I still feel like the NBA is a very it's rich man, poor man. You're either going to be really terrible or really good. You don't want to be in that in between. The Kings wanted to kill to be in the in-between, because that was success to them, because they've been on the bottom end of things for so long that they wanted to show some progress. You've shown that progress. You weren't just a middle-of-the-road team. You got up to 3rd this year, and that is not a fool's gold thing. I mean, that's a huge accomplishment. So to be able to build upon the success that you had last year and step into this offseason and make proper adjustments and not just tread water, that's the expectation. And the expectation is to go out there and maybe not have more than 48 wins, but you want to show progress. That's why I said a few weeks ago that you can go out there, be a 42, 45 win team, possibly be better than you were this year, and position yourself to be able to make a sustained playoff run. And I think that would be more successful than the year that you had this year. So if they can do that, I think that I agree with you, James. I think especially if they are able to keep Sabonis, I think they will be able to be that team that's able to seize the opportunity and make the most of it.
I think having your lead of the front office and coaching staff locked in is just extremely helpful going into an offseason. You can extend all of your effort on improving the team rather than have to worrying about filling those voids. You already know the general direction you want to move in. And I think just working together as a unit should just make things easier this offseason compared to what Sacramento's used to in years prior. And I was just on a different podcast that asked me, like, what's worst case scenario for this offseason? And there's really not a horrible scenario. It's like losing HB and not being able to find another guy that can fill into that starting spot, which would suck. But the Kings have a majority of their core locked in, and they're pretty young. You know, De'Aaron Fox is here. Domantas Sabonis, I guess it is just one more year, as Sean was talking about there, but he's locked into this next year. Keegan Murray, Kevin Huerter, Malik Monk, these guys are back, and those are the guys that are playing the heavy loads of your minutes. So I think that they're in a good spot to continue going up from here and sort of take advantage of the chaos that's going on in the Western Conference. But while they do need to figure out another guy and maybe could, if need be, like play with those pick restrictions with Atlanta or remove those and try to package picks and go get another guy, that's a route of improvement. But I think the most likely one is just hoping that you get some internal improvement from some of these guys, that Fox and Sabonis are still young, that they can take a slight jump in their games, that Keegan Murray can continue to develop, Davion Mitchell, like can either of Kevin Huerter or Malik Monk add something to their game. So I think they're in a good spot having their leadership locked in and a lot of their young core to just continue building from here.
Yeah, maintain and improve. That is what Monty said, right? And Brenden, you bring up something that I think we kind of miss, like the whole idea that you're solid at your management and head coaching position. Last summer, going through a coaching change, not only a coaching change, but a coach that coached deep into June and won an NBA championship with the Warriors. So he wasn't part of the draft process. He wasn't part of the workouts and the whole game plan for free agency and everything else. He just wasn't. And when he got here, as soon as he hit the ground, he had to build a staff and he had to start, doing the other things like to get the team rolling. And then, the fact that like 2 years before that, Monty's gone. Even the year before that, you knew that Luke was on very shaky ground going into the season. So I think that is big because now you're building something. You're not rebuilding something, which is something that the Kings are always doing. They're always rebuilding and starting from scratch and starting with a new identity or searching for their culture. I think they have a culture. I think they can build on their culture. And I think that you're right. They could probably withstand even losing Harrison Barnes as long as you find some other guy around the league that might not be as good that fits, but might fit your team better. And so I think it's an interesting, moment in time for the Kings because I could easily see them, being a 2, 3, 4, 5, like for the next couple of years in the Western Conference, even though the Western Conference is really, really good. I'm not going to say they're going to be the 1 seed because, teams like Denver and there's some other teams out there that I think are really solid and still have their base. But the Kings are one of the few teams who aren't going through chaos and have potential to improve and have potential to bring in players that actually are meaningful and fit their system, where other teams are, again, still in the full-fledged coaching search and everything else that's happening right now. So, yeah, kind of interesting. All right, let's close out, Sean. What the hell were you doing at the zoo with Domas?
Checking out the giraffes and the new baby orangutan. So Domantas Sabonis is finding ways to get into the community, and you guys know, I think if everyone follows my work over the past 2 decades, like I like to really get in the community and shed light on those stories that are out there when people get into the community, especially these Kings players, because Sacramento's a lot different, man. Fans love to know their players on the court and off, and really kind of know the ones that are making a difference. And Domantas is a newer father. It's a role he's playing that he's absolutely embracing. And he partnered with Jennifer Siebel Newsom in the first five California. And they went out to the zoo and had an event to bring, attention to adverse childhood experiences that possibly cause toxic stress and really among young children. So Domantas got up there in this event and he was able to speak in front of a big group of people, even a little bit of Spanish, as we've kind of known that he's able to do. And it's kind of funny because sometimes you'll see politicians, especially who, have huge busy schedules, that make an appearance and have to dip. Same thing with some athletes sometimes, but Domas stayed there for the whole thing, listened to the whole panel. He was engaged, locked in, and he was really able to. He's learning more about it and says, anything that First Five California needs, he's gonna be there and be a part of. And it's something he's identified, he's passionate about, and it stems from him being a brand new father. So it was at the zoo. He's got Tiger, who is his son, and he was able to kind of take him to go see the giraffes and some of the other things. But it was just kind of cool seeing some people, walking through the zoo and look up and go, oh shit, that's Domantas Sabonis. And he's out there by himself. And I hadn't been to the zoo in a long time. So that was kind of fun for me. And I'll drive down, Sutterville every now and then. You can see the giraffes, their necks, their heads hanging over the fence, eating the trees over there, and that's always kind of a fun visual. But got to spend a day at the zoo with Domas. There was some basketball conversation. I was looking at his hand, shook his hand. It's not wrapped. It looks good. I asked him if surgery's been ruled out. Not yet. It hasn't been determined yet because they're still seeing how the rehab goes, and that's kind of the holdup. So he'll be reevaluated soon, and whether or not they'll like what they're seeing, or maybe they'll have to do some sort of operation, but it hasn't been totally taken off the table yet. And I think that's what's kind of holding up FIBA a little bit as well. So it all has to do with what the hand is doing, but he says it feels great. It was unfortunate not to see him out of Bottle Rock, but we were able to be there with this, and it was a lot of fun. So we'll have that. I hope I'll have the whole interview up at some point, but most of it is talking about the program that he's with. And if anyone wants to check it out, it's First Five California. Go check it out.
Sweet. And then the other piece we have, Brenden wrote a really nice long piece on Sasha Vezenkov over at the Kings Herald, and you were able to get Chima Monecki to chat with you. Brenden, tell us about that, what you got over at the Kings Herald.
I did. Yeah. Chima just played against Sasha in the EuroLeague semifinals, and just talked to me a tiny bit about kind of going up against him and how he thinks he could possibly translate to the NBA, specifically alongside Fox and Sabonis. And just watching more Olympiacos, like their offense is amazing. It's just so like ball and player movement. It's very similar to Sacramento's. They have a passing big, obviously not the same extent as Domas, but even just somebody that's slightly capable. Like a lot of the actions look really similar. There's one clip in here that I was happy with how it came out, of kind of just putting Kings action, and then right after action of Sasha doing something similar in his team with Olympiacos, and just kind of saying why I think there's a really good offensive translation there for Sasha, and why I think it could be fairly seamless.
Yeah, I mean, I think right away you can see his 3-point shooting is not going to be an issue. He gets it off so quick. And I think the other, like, he's going to have even more space at the NBA level. And so that's great. I think he'll be able to do that. And the other thing he does that I love is all the back cuts. I think him and Domas are really going to play off each other really well. I think it's going to be fun to watch. So defensively, I'm very concerned. And I have no idea what position he's going to play on the defensive end. Like, he's physical and he can rebound a little bit, but like that's not the NBA. The only thing I think we keep hearing, like maybe like a $4 to $5 million offer, that might be the range that he's in. And like barring something crazy, I think that would actually be a pretty good deal for the Kings. Cause I just keep coming back to the fact that I don't think that they're like coming into the league. I think he's going to be as good or better than Davis Bertans, and Davis is making like 17 or $18 million a year. So you're getting a stretch 4, which is, something that every team in the league needs and wants. But you're probably getting him at a really good budget rate as he's entering his prime. And so, if he fits, he fits. If not, I'm sure he'll find his way back to Europe and find success, just like our good old friend Nemanja Bjelica. Okay. Do we have any final thoughts? I don't know. Sean, what do you got?
I watched, I know there's a lot of prestige, what I like to call prestige TV series that ended this past week. Like Succession and Barry and Ted Lasso. But
don't spoil any Ted Lasso.
I'm not going to spoil any. I'm not spoiling none of them. What I'm saying is, I need to watch the final season of Ted Lasso. I wasn't all that thrilled with the season before that, so that's kind of why I was a little bit late to the party this season. That, and there's just been a lot of work and basketball going on, but I haven't seen a lick of Succession, and fortunately, I haven't had any of it spoiled for me. I've been able to navigate, and not have it, but I'm going to start that. I think this in the next week or so. But I did watch Barry. Love Barry. Was a big fan of that show. I love how silly and crazy and that it could be, but also wonderfully acted, beautifully written, beautifully shot. Bill Hader is one talented son of a bitch. So
he is.
If you haven't seen Barry and you like kind of a wild ride, go check it out.
Brenden, what do you got for us?
I don't have anything today. I have basketball thoughts, but I won't share any basketball thoughts. No, there's nothing going on up here, Sean.
No, nothing.
You have basketball thoughts? What kind of basketball thoughts?
Like randomly today and kind of looking at like movement shooters and stuff in the draft, like just a thought that, Herter and Monk are on this team, but it couldn't. That could change pretty quickly. Malik has 1 year left. You won't have his bird rights. And if Harrison Barnes is not there, your matching salaries you're talking about in trades, your best one probably becomes Kevin Herter, unless you're talking about Rashawn Holmes. But just, thinking that don't be scared of movement shooters just because you have some, because these guys aren't super long-term necessarily. They're not guaranteed to be long-term.
Okay. Malik Monk, they'll have his early bird rights. So an early bird rights at that point will be like 12 to 13 million bucks a year.
Gotcha.
Like starting salary. So I still think like if he loves it here, he loves it here. Maybe there's a team out there that wants to pay him 18 million bucks a year, but I don't think so. Teams are capped a little bit with how much they can spend right now. There just isn't a lot of cap space out there. And so you're looking at mid-level exceptions and biannual exceptions. And then, can he get bigger money than he can in Sacramento? Maybe a little bit, but I'm not sure. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe someone throws a whole bunch of money at him, but I think playing here with his buddy actually means a lot to him. But I also agree with you that when you start talking about trades and like how big of a swing do you want to take, there's a possibility you have to cut into the core, and some of that stuff is sitting right there for you. So yeah, good thought. Let me see. Last thoughts for me. Once again, I'm just going to I think I'm going to make this like a PSA at every single one of these podcasts. Do not go swimming in the river. Do not go in the river. And I know that seems really weird, but find a lake, find another body of water. I know I just heard that Truckee is shutting down that whole entire thing where you float down the river. Sean, have you ever done that? The float down the river on tubes in Truckee?
Not in Truckee. I've done it in American River, and I've done it in just in the Sacramento region. But yeah, not. And again, I grew up in this town. Yeah, that current is. I don't care how good of a swimmer you are. That current is crazy. There's so much debris and stuff down there that it's pretty wild. And life jackets. Yeah, even like the Truckee thing, they've shut down for the season. They're not going to have the floating down the river thing, from what I've heard, just because they know how dangerous it is this year. So stay out of the river. Just give me a call. You can come up and hang out at the lake. If you don't have my number, you can't come hang out at the lake. But I was going to make a bad joke, but it's not hard to find.
There it is. My number's not that hard to find. Nice.
No. Sweet. I did it to another media member about bathroom stalls at one point. That was
yeah, so I remember who that was exactly.
That was fun.
Yeah.
He was a good sport about it.
He was. Sweet. All right. Well, I think that's going to do it for this edition of the Kings Beat podcast. We will be back next week with another podcast with me, Sean, and Brenden. We will also be back next Thursday. We're going to do a happy hour from 5:30 to 7:30 ish. That is June 8th.
Finals aren't that day, are they?
No, the finals are Wednesday. Nope.
That's good.
So yeah, and I mean, there's nothing else going on, especially if you're an A's fan, or a Giants fan for that matter too. Like,
hey, they're back at 500.
Whatever. There ain't nothing going on.
They had won like 4 straight series
until they lost
the Pirates 2-3 to the Pirates. So
there you go. Yeah. So make sure to jump on board with the Kings Beat. Subscribe to the show here. Give us a thumbs up if you're still watching on YouTube, and jump on board with the Kings Beat. Go to thekingsbeat.com, become a premium subscriber to get an invite to the happy hour. I'll announce the guest as soon as I have it locked up, but I think it'll probably be in the next day or two, and that should be fun. So cool. I think that's it. So thanks for joining us here on the Kings Beat podcast. For Fox 40, Sean Cunningham and Brenden Nunes from the Kings Pulse podcast. I am James Hammer, Kings Insider for ESPN 1320 and the Kings Beat. See you next week.